Game Dev Tycoon. In this game, you make games. You start by making games in your garage and work all your way up to a big AAA game studio with far less people than what actually goes into a AAA game studio. Well, regardless, I got this game back when I was in middle school, and I honestly never really got that far. I mean, I did get to the final office, but I lost shortly after getting there. I've picked up and put down this game numerous times throughout my years, but I never legitly beat it. As in, I use mods like hints, which basically just tells you how to make a good game, and a literal cheats mod for emergencies. This game has been in my Steam library for like ever, and hell, I even have it downloaded. So, I decided that I'd finally beat this game, but this time without any mods or even looking anything up. Oh yeah, and in case the title didn't make this clear, this video isn't a review about Game Dev Tycoon. I don't know enough about making games to feel justified about reviewing a game. No. This video is about my experience with Game Dev Tycoon. Alright, first attempt. Company name will be First Try, and my name will be Bread. Why Bread? Well, 2 restaurants I went to thought my name was Bread. I don't know how you get bread from Greg, but oh well. Onto the game. So, when you start the game, you're given 4 topics to make a game out of. Now, the topics gotta fit the game you're making because SimCity 4 fighting in the streets just ain't gonna sell very well. I've always been good at making simulation games in this game. Boy, that's gonna be annoying to say. So long as we get a topic that works for simulation games, we'll be golden. And look at that! 3 topics that do well for simulation. Our first game got a 5.5, which isn't great, but not bad for our first game. But then I had to do something that wasn't simulation. It helps to switch it up every time you reach another game. So I did a strategy game and boom! A great score of 8.25, which is pretty tough for your second game. However, as I played more, I started to slip up. A lot of the games that I made weren't doing too good until I made 2 solid back-to-back 8.25 games. An action sci-fi game, which I gave a parody name of Halo, and a business strategy game I called Nothing Personal. Honestly, coming up with parody names or just clever names in general is part of the fun of Game Dev Tycoon. And I feel like the game encourages that with goofy names like GameSphere and Play System. Anywho, after those 2 games, we got a good chunk of money and we're able to upgrade our game engine, which is important for getting to the next office. You're gonna need $1 million to upgrade, which sounds like a lot, but if I pull off more games like I just made, we'll be there in no time. I wasn't able to hit a big scoring game for a while, but eventually we're able to crawl our way to the new office. This is where the game gets a bit tougher. You can make larger games now, but on the plus side, you can now hire people. So I hired some new people. Too many people who were way over my budget, and I ended up losing and going bankrupt soon after. What'd I tell ya? This game's pretty brutal. But I got right back in the saddle and made another file with the company's name being Take 2. Okay, start is still the same. Sort of. From what we learned from the last round, we figured out that I actually suck at making simulation games, so we started with the strategy game this time. Now most of the stuff is still the same here, so I'm just gonna gloss over it. Things were pretty rough at the start, and I got into the red by my 5th game. Honestly, that's a pretty good sign that you should restart. But I'm here to learn how to play, so I trudged on. After a bit of futzing around, I was able to make some better games and clean up that mess I made earlier. Another change from last time is that I focused on getting new perks for my game engine, instead of spending all my research points on game topics. It didn't take long until my game started breaking records of both design and tech. I kept getting great score after great score, and I even managed to get a few 9s, which was something I wasn't even able to do last game, so things are looking up! The weirdest thing is that I actually took a break from playing this game, and when I got back, I started making bangers. And shortly after, I made a game that got 3 10s. The Crawling Death is what I called it, and it was a zombies RPG directed at a mature audience. You may be thinking, mature audience? That's new. And you'd be correct in thinking that. Last game, I never even saved up enough research points to get targeted audience, which could really help at your score if you choose the right audience. Like mature for a military game or young for a virtual pet game. Anywho, Crawling Dead rocketed me to my new office in just the first week of sales. Now we're ready to take on that challenge that we couldn't before. To start off, we're not going to waste 100k hiring this time. Instead, we're spending about 20k on some of the cheapest scrubs in the game-making world. Weirdly enough, the cheaper employees actually had better or comparable stats to the more expensive people in that price range. But my frugality, ironically, paid off. We're sitting at a cheap monthly payment of 66k, instead of the 200-something K compared to last run. Unfortunately, you get what you pay for, and my crew was close to useless. This meant that I was doing most of the work, while they just ate up some cash every once in a while. Weird fact, but I guess you get nerfed once you get a new office, because I was putting out about a third of what I did alone. I don't know why that's a feature, but oh well. I figured it was time to make my first medium game, which I wasn't even able to do last run. Medium games are bigger, cost twice as much, and you have to manage your team on each stage of development, which could be a chore if it wasn't so simple. Game Dev Tycoon has a lot of stuff they make super simple, which helps keep the pace of the game going and make it fun. So, you know, good job, Greenheart Games. The crew performed just as terrible as when we made those small games, so I decided it was time for some radical changes. I fired everyone and downgraded to a smaller team of 3, which only cost me about 84k, which is a bit more than my first crew, but they were twice as useful. Actually useful. The last crew was useless, and these fellows actually did something to help. And boom! Those are the numbers you want to see in a medium game. And that score at the end? You'll love to see it. We got a good footing in this new office, and all we have to do is keep it up. A few games later, we unlocked sequels, which means we can stop trying new topics and just remake our best games, but better. Once you unlock this, it's much easier to just keep doing sequels, because you already know how to do them. I also hired the final member to the crew. After a few sequels, we got far enough in the game to update our office. Not upgrade, mind you, just make it look better, with a nice floor and some cool red walls. Unfortunately, I started to slip up a bit on my sequels, and I just kept getting lower scores. So I decided it was time to unveil a new game engine, this one costing 1 million. It was about time that we did that, because the first game we released on this new engine did extremely well and reclaimed our spot in the safe zone. For a time. A few mistakes later, and we were right back to where we started. And then we kept making mistakes. And kept making mistakes. And kept losing money! And that's when it hit me. It's not me! It's them! So with the fury of a tire set free from a car, I fired all my employees! It didn't work. To be honest, I kind of expected that, but Take-Two as a company just kept failing, so I figured that I might as well experiment before we go bankrupt. So I fired everyone again! Now only I will carry on the flame, untainted by other people's ideas. I will make my own games, in my image. In interview, hype the game. This will be the greatest entertainment ever made. Here it is, my magnum opus! It somehow actually did better than the games before it. Guess there's something to learn about training your employees. Because if you look at the start of my descent into madness, I actually put out higher points than I ever did before. Now, of course, that all went away once I loaded myself up with all the work a medium game requires. So the plan for the remainder of the run was to mess around with some of the trading options and then go bankrupt. At least that was the plan! You see, I tested doing some small games instead of medium games, and my scores went way up. So much so that I could actually stay afloat. But that meant that I would always have to be training, so someone else would have to do the research. So I grabbed one more person to do all the research. Wyatt here would exist solely for the purpose of researching new stuff for a new game engine, while I focused on breaking my back carrying this company. After some time, and many mediocre games later, we finally were able to outdo some of our previous games. This most recent game, Dragon Era, parody of Dragon Age, landed an 8.5, which is far higher than the games we've been making. We're finally back into a safe place in terms of cash. Safe place enough to justify hiring a new person. Not a research slut this time. No, an actual developer that I will train to be just as good as me. I'll be honest though, Wyatt stopped being a research slut a long time ago, but it'll be nice to have an extra hand on deck. So, welcome to the team, Sally. After a slew of mediocre games, I finally got enough research points to upgrade my game engine. And so, engine, Take 5 was made. Our first game, Dragon Era Dirkwall, broke both previous records, landing us our highest scoring game. Shortly after, we hit 100k fans. No idea what that does, but hey, milestone! I guess the gaming gods decided they wanted me to move on, because after that, we started making crazy good games. And soon after that, we moved on to the next and final office. Okay, I mean, technically, we could have moved into the final office sooner. All I had to do was grab one more person, but I didn't know that. I wasn't lying when I said I wasn't gonna look anything up. Regardless, we got one more slacker who is he's just the worst. He's just no good, but he might be okay later. Here's the problem right now. We're not making enough money to realistically sustain a full staff. So we're gonna crawl around in the dirt for a bit until we can. But after a bit of, crawling, this message popped up. The game will end in a year. I've never seen this before, and I'm quite excited to see it. We definitely have enough money to make it to the end, so all we have to do now is wait. And soon enough, the final year! It's over! I can finally upload again! Our final score is being added up now. And we didn't do too great. I guess it makes sense, given how we never got a few milestones, nor did we make any large games. I would have liked if I could have gotten more things done, but I decided that now would be a good time to look stuff up. An R&D department wouldn't have taken me too much more to make, but the real thing I wanted would have taken me forever at this point. Making your very own consoles requires someone to have at least 3,000 technology points. The highest we had was me at 900, so that's never gonna happen. Regardless, I accomplished what I set out to do. I beat Game Dev Tycoon. I know, this seems a little anticlimactic, but I would like to upload more than one video per year. Anywho, this clearly took me far too long to make, so I'm not super motivated to make a video in this style again. Of course, if you would like to see more videos like this, just let me know. And if you got any games that you would like me to beat next, comment that down below. I guess this is where the outro should go, but I don't have one. So, enjoy the all-consuming void of silence until the video's over.